How bad is the homelessness situation getting in Venice Beach, Los Angeles? I sat down with California reporter Jamie Joseph to find out.
Walking through the streets in Venice Beach is not easy, with piles of belongings and tents occupying the sidewalks. Aside from safety issues, lack of sanitation during the COVID-19 pandemic makes the situation worse, especially after it rains. Residents worry the drainage system will bring all the trash and hazards from the streets into the ocean.
The next day after, it's 75 degrees and tourists are coming. They don't know that this is coming out.
Brian Ulf is also a resident here. He serves on the LAPD volunteer board. He said due to the pandemic, the city stopped its annual homeless count, but he estimated there are about 2,500 homeless people living on the streets in Venice Beach.
So I lived in Los Angeles for 7 years, and every year I saw it get worse with homelessness, I would say with safety. So it's June 10th, 2019, and I decided to drive around to show you how overwhelming the homeless problem is getting in Los Angeles. It didn't take me very long to get this footage. It's everywhere. Where are you from?
I'm from Africa, from Nigeria.
Is it like that there?
Yeah, it's pretty much like this. Yeah, but I think it's a little bit better. This is worse.
Really?
Like on the street like this. No,
you don't see that.
No, you don't see that.
Wow. And I know during the pandemic it got even worse, obviously. What's going on with that, with Venice and just in general with Los Angeles homelessness?
Yeah, so, even before the pandemic, homelessness was already on the rise. We saw with the Prop HHH funds, which was passed in 2016, that's a $1.2 billion bond that was supposed to go to permanent supportive housing units. And 5 years later,
Jamie reports that only 3 buildings with 179 supportive housing units have been built.
Obviously, people are like, what's going on? Because all of those projects are stuck in the pipeline, and we're seeing this housing first model being pushed. Yet the homelessness situation is getting worse and worse, even though we're spending so much money on homelessness each year.
Estimated there are about 2,500 homeless people living on the streets in Venice Beach.
When you enforce these violations and people have cell phones, they turn those cell phone videos into big issue. Every time we move somebody, we get sued by an activist group or by somebody. And so let's just wait till they get the housing. The problem is they're not building the housing.
The city is operating a temporary supportive housing project called A Bridge Housing, which shelters around 100 people according to its website. There's also an affordable housing project under consideration. The $68 million project is planning to offer 140 units, with each unit costing roughly $480,000, according to a website created by residents opposing the project. Considering its cost and capacity, residents worry it's not the right way.
140 units is not going to go a long way. It will never solve any of this. It's just a drop in the bucket.
And how much did they spend on homelessness?
Yeah, $1.2 billion was allocated for over a 10-year span.
Venice has always been grungy,
yes,
but it's never been this bad. So
right.
Why do you think it's that bad?
Yeah.
And, what do you think they're doing wrong?
Well, the first thing to understand about Venice is, like you said, it has always had that grungy, hipster kind of misfit vibe to it. And there have always been a presence of homeless people in Venice, but they were artists, entertainers, musicians. All of the business owners knew them by name. They were part of the community. But per city code, they were not allowed to have encampments on the beach. And if they did, they had to break it down by a certain time. But with the pandemic, that got rolled back. Mike Bonin declared Venice a sanctuary zone. So that's why we're seeing all of the encampments. And then he cut the sanitation enforcement because they cut a lot of their teams just per COVID to limit contact. So you're rolling back sanitation, you're allowing encampments on the beach, which is kind of a call to other homeless people in other cities, if they need a place to stay, to come down to Venice. There was also, I don't know if you saw this, but the Los Angeles Fire Department came out with a report saying over 54% of fires in Los Angeles are caused by homeless encampments. That's a huge number. And just, I want to say a month ago, a homeless person set somebody's house on fire and burned her house down, and she was at work, thankfully, but her dog died.
I heard about that story, and this really frustrated me because I was wearing a mask before masks were cool, but it was an air filter mask because the air pollution's so bad in Los Angeles, but also there were all of these fires, and one of the biggest fire, I'll never forget, because I was out at like a club and a bar, and the smoke was just billowing, black smoke in the air. And this fire was, I believe, somewhere in the Silver Lake Echo Park area, and someone had set some sort of garbage disposal thing on fire. It was like a garbage disposal facility or a plastic facility set on fire. So you're talking about this huge fire with this disgusting smoke that is trash and plastic and all these things that are so toxic to breathe. And people like Gavin Newsom and Democrat politicians went up and said, climate change, climate change, climate change, climate change, climate change. And I'm thinking, listen, we could have a conversation about the forest fires, but this fire, no one wanted to cover, and it had nothing to do with the temperature of the planet or climate change. It had everything to do with who set that facility on fire. And this type of smoke is way more toxic than most other types of pollution, I'm guessing, and no one was talking about it. So it's just like, if it doesn't fit their, socio agenda or whatever they're pushing, they don't even care. And I'm thinking, like, not just environmentalism, but your lungs. This is crazy types of pollution, and that's stuck in the air for a week. And they tried to use that to push, climate change when all these fires were happening. The forest fires, we could have a longer conversation and debate about, but these fires that are started, a lot of it is from the homelessness, because when you allow tens of thousands, if not at this point, more than that, people on the street who are just doing whatever they want.
We understand how dangerous the water is, especially after a rainstorm.
Brian is a resident here in Venice Beach, Los Angeles. He says the extensive homeless encampments in the neighborhood is a burden on the city's sanitation department. Around the outlet of the storm drainage system, there are trash and needles. They collect with the rainwater from the city and ultimately lead into the ocean.
And you'll see people barefoot walking through it. And if they have a cut, guess what? Okay, so this is like third world conditions. And you can also see the signage here is very poor. And if you're over here, you're not going to see it.
Rick Swinger is another resident and environmental activist from the area. He worries that besides trash, there could be more hazards in the water, especially human waste, heavy metals, and bacteria.
What are they doing? Well, they're going out like this and right in the gutters. And guess where the gutters is flowing? It's flowing right here.
Even though the city has set up many porta potties, most of the homeless struggle with mental illnesses, which prevents them from using them. Instead, they will defecate on the sidewalks and on residential properties. Rick said when it rains, most of the waste goes into the drainage system. 72 hours ago, it rained in Venice Beach. But when it rains, it pours. Trash, needles, and human feces from the homeless encampments slide into the storm drain, creating a runoff leading into the ocean. Residents here are worried for the health and safety of beachgoers as well as the ocean's wildlife.
The LA River bypasses the sewage treatment plant, goes directly into the ocean. All year our oceans have been ranked C to F. It's dangerous to be in our oceans. We're having sea mammal die off. One straw in one turtle's nose, a national crisis. We have a catastrophe environmentally caused by the feces and blood and urine on our streets, bypassing sewage treatment. If a city the size of Pasadena suddenly disconnected from sewage treatment, you don't think the environmentalists would have something to say about it? Where are they? That's what I've been asking.
When I leaned more left, the one thing that was really appealing and still is appealing to me, but doesn't seem to be to a lot of people, was environmentalism, because I do believe in clean water to drink, clean oceans. I think we're polluting way, way too much. And because of partisan politics, and I would say hate for the other side and love for an obsession over their agenda, they forgot about that. So, of course, the oceans are polluted in Venice. The streets are polluted in Venice. It's going to lead to polluted water in Venice. You have these masks that, when it's all said and done, you could look at how much they stopped the spread and how much they didn't per, across countries who didn't do it and states who didn't do it. Was it worth the billions upon billions upon billions of polluted masks that are now going to go into the ocean when we could have figured out a more sustainable way to do it, or, had a conversation about the environmental cost of wearing plastic masks or whatever they are, cloth masks, throwing them out. We did so much damage with just that year of disposable masks, and nobody's talking about it on the left because environmentalism doesn't matter as much as that agenda. You have that sort of pollution that's weighing into the oceans, and it's disappointing because I think They've, in a weird way, they've got people to hate themselves, hate their environment, hate their community, hate their country. But it's not just their country and the flag. Like, oh my God, nationalism's so bad. Okay, let's take it smaller. I'm a Los Angeles resident. I love the people of here of all ethnicities. What are you doing for the community workers who work here? I talk to people who work at Trader Joe's, who own a Thai restaurant, who own an Italian restaurant. They're the ones who have to deal with this filth and degeneracy and homelessness and rise of crime. I used to go to a Subway. I probably should have ate something better, but I used to go to the Subway, and now there's a security guard in Subway in Hollywood after me living there for 3 years. Why? Because it's not safe anymore. It used to be safe at night. Now it's not. So the whole community's wearing down, and these people don't seem to care. In fact, they seem to love it. I feel like their activism, environmentalism has been replaced with brainwash and self-sabotage, where they want Echo Park to be disgusting. It's like, okay, now somebody's actually, after years, going to try to clean it up because there's families and children who walk around here, elderly people getting attacked in Venice all the time, and it's like people are attached to that. They want the filth, they want the pollution, they want the degeneracy, they want the crime.
Every time we move somebody, we get sued by an activist group or by somebody.
And then a year after their activism fails, they're like, wow, there is way more crime than I thought there was going to be. So in a weird way, they've definitely not only ruined the community, but they don't care about all this activism that they pretend to. I'm not attending the Women's March this year. I did last year, and I watched these women's rights activists walk right past the homelessness situation in Los Angeles. It was all over downtown LA, which is where they protest, and they walked past dozens of tents, holding their signs, throwing up the peace sign, acting like such great people. And perhaps the most symbolic thing I saw was this sign right next to a homeless tent saying, "The greatest cruelty is our casual blindness to the despair of others. #SheDoes." Could not have been better. And it's not just these tents. Just a few blocks east of where they're protesting, it looks like this. These companies and these politicians that are literally running some of the greatest places in the country into the ground. Like, I don't even like going to LA anymore because they've ruined it, not just with the lockdowns. I watch the NBA, and you have Utah, you have all of these more conservative states. They have nearly full, or if not full capacity, and the fans are going crazy. And then you look at the Los Angeles Clippers, and I don't know what percentage they're at. It's definitely not 100%, but they have cardboard cutouts in the stands, and there's more cardboard cutouts than human beings. This is like a Black Mirror AI takeover sci-fi movie I'm watching in real time, and it's like liberals don't even understand it. And with what I was saying before, I feel like it's so much deeper than even politics, because on their face, they're supposed to care about the environment more than conservatives. They're supposed to care about, their community and people of color and all this stuff that they talk about more than that. But when you go to Hollywood, the people who live in the hills, those are the wealthy people. Those are the people on television. The people who live in Hollywood is very heavily Hispanic. So these are the ones who have to deal with the homelessness.
Exactly.
These are the ones who have to deal with the crime rise. I lived in Hollywood, and I saw a woman basically get jumped and robbed right in front of me. We pulled over. The dude ran away. I think she was fine, and, someone else came and also helped. But it's like there's women just getting jumped in broad daylight, and you don't care. There's the Thai restaurant on the corner that doesn't feel safe anymore, that's getting broken into. My buddy I played soccer with, an Italian immigrant who owned a restaurant, he's like, you wouldn't believe how bad the homelessness, someone comes in spitting, drooling, freaking out. And it's like, I don't want to have to deal with this. And it's growing, and it's growing, and it's growing, and it's growing. And they're attached to it. They're attached to it. They're attached to the decline of their own neighborhood. This is a human rights issue and an environmental issue. And I would think in Los Angeles and San Francisco, where all the environmentalists are, they would care. But it just shows the hypocrisy and how far gone these people have gone, where how are you going to save the environment of the planet if you can't even save your own environment and your own community? And it is very creepy that people like Gascon, Kamala Harris, and the Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey's of the world, and God knows whoever's running YouTube and Google at this point, that they're looking at the world like, we're going to control it all. We're going to tell you what you can and can't do, when it's their own communities that are declining and spiraling probably faster than anywhere else in this country.